Nearly 1,000 stone giants stand guard on a remote Pacific island. How could an isolated people carve and move 80-ton statues across miles of rugged terrain without metal tools or wheels? By the end of this journey, you will understand the incredible blend of engineering and spiritual belief that brought these monoliths to life. We will investigate how they were carved from a volcano and uncover the heated debate over whether they were dragged or made to walk. What does the fate of a vanished civilization truly tell us about our own world? This extreme isolation defined every aspect of life on Rapa Nui, surrounded by thousands of miles of empty ocean in every direction. The island was a world unto itself. The nearest inhabited land was so far away it might as well have been on another planet. For the people who settled there was no trading for resources or ideas with neighboring cultures. There was no outside help. Every problem, from building shelter to finding food, required a solution invented from scratch using only what the island itself provided. This was a society forged in a crucible of solitude, and it produced a culture unlike any other. Their entire worldview, their technology, and their ambitions were shaped by the resources immediately at hand. The most ambitious of these projects was without a doubt the creation of the Moai. These were not simple stone carvings. They were colossal declarations of identity and belief, born from a society that had to rely entirely on its own ingenuity. To comprehend how they moved 80-ton giants, we must first grasp the profound self-reliance that their isolation demanded. Their greatest challenge became their most stunning triumph. Carved directly into the slopes of a dormant volcano, the Raraku Quarry is a breathtaking open-air workshop frozen mid-action. The mountain itself is scarred with the evidence of a colossal enterprise, a place where giants were literally born from the earth. Here, nearly 400 moai in every conceivable stage of creation stand as a silent but powerful record of the entire carving process. Some are just faint outlines emerging from the bedrock, while others are fully formed colossus, their sharp features staring out from the rock face, waiting for a journey that never came. This is not a random collection of statues, it is a step-by-step archaeological guidebook. The primary material was a compressed volcanic tuff, a rock that was relatively soft and manageable when first quarried but hardened after prolonged exposure to air. This was the perfect compromise, soft enough to be shaped with basic stone hand chisels called toki, yet durable enough to withstand the elements once in place. The scale of the operation is what truly staggers the mind. We are not looking at the work of a few individuals, but a highly organized, generations-long communal project. The quarry speaks of a society with a singular, unifying purpose, capable of coordinating the labor of countless artisans and workers. From this birthplace of giants, the logical next question is almost deafening in its silence. How did they get them out? The sheer walls of Raraku reveal a masterclass in Stone Age engineering. Without metal, the Rapa Nui artisans relied on something far more fundamental: profound skill and unyielding patience. Their primary tool was the toki, a hand-held pick carved from basalt, a stone harder than the volcanic tuff they were shaping. With these simple implements, they achieved a level of precision that seems almost impossible to us today. Think of the sound, the constant, rhythmic tapping of stone on stone echoing through the quarry for generations. Experimental archaeology, where modern researchers recreate these ancient techniques, has proven just how effective this method was. A dedicated team could carve a medium-sized moai in under a year. The process was a deliberate, step-by-step ritual. They began by carefully outlining the statue's face and front, then worked downwards and inwards, slowly freeing the giant from its earthen womb. A solid keel of rock was intentionally left attached to its back, a crucial detail that acted like a spine, holding the statue securely to the mountain until it was ready for its journey. To make the work easier and to protect their lungs, they likely splashed water onto the rock, softening the surface and keeping the choking dust at bay. This was not brute force, it was a delicate conversation between the carvers and the mountain. The fact that they could achieve such smooth, defined features with nothing more than basalt picks speaks volumes about their intimate understanding of the material. This mastery over creation, however, was only the first act. The true and even more baffling challenge began the moment the keel was finally broken. How do you convince an 80-ton stone giant to take its first steps? The most telling stories in Rano Raraku are not told by the statues that were finished, but by the ones that were not. Scattered throughout the quarry are giants frozen in time, their forms eternally emerging from the volcanic rock. These abandoned moai are a silent archaeological treasure trove, offering a raw, uncensored look into the carver's world. Some are mere suggestions of a face, a faint outline waiting for definition. Others are nearly complete, their sharp, angular features fully realized, yet they remain stubbornly connected to the mountain by that solid rock keel running down their backs. They are like sculptures paused mid-sentence, and they provide critical clues to every step of the process. Then there is the one known as El Gigant, the giant. It is a breathtaking vision of what might have been a colossus that would have stood over 70 feet tall and weighed an almost unimaginable 270 tons. Its massive form was never fully freed from the quarry wall. Was it abandoned because of an unseen crack in the stone, a fatal flaw discovered too late? Or does its sheer, overwhelming scale signal that the islanders had finally reached a physical limit, that their ambition had outpaced their resources? The reasons for these abandonments are a quiet debate among researchers. Perhaps it was simple, practical issues with the rock, or, more intriguingly, it could point to a sudden, dramatic shift in the society itself, a moment when the old ways and their unifying purpose began to fracture. These silent, half-born sentinels are a poignant snapshot of an industry interrupted, a powerful reminder that this incredible endeavor was carried out by fallible humans. And they lead us directly to the next, even more daunting puzzle. If carving an 80-ton giant was a monumental achievement, moving it across the island was a feat that borders on mythology. The half-born giants of Rano Raraku present a powerful question. How did their completed brothers travel miles across the island to their final altars? The solution to moving these multi-ton statues is the most hotly debated mystery of Easter Island. For decades, the most captivating theory suggested the moai did not slide or roll, they walked. Popularized by researchers like Terry Hunt and Carl Lipo, this idea paints a dramatic picture. Teams of rope pullers would have stood on either side of a standing statue, carefully rocking it from side to side. With each rhythmic sway, the giant would be coaxed forward, its base pivoting with every step. The statue's unique design seems to support this. Their heavy, bulging bellies and D-shaped bases could have created a center of mass that made this controlled rocking motion possible. It is a theory that turns an engineering problem into a kind of ceremonial dance, a procession of walking giants. Yet not all researchers are convinced. Competing theories argue for a more grounded, though no less impressive, approach. Perhaps the moai were laid down on their backs, strapped to a wooden sledge. This platform could then have been pulled over a path of logs used as rollers, a method familiar to many ancient cultures. To reduce the immense friction, the islanders might have lubricated the track with a paste made from mashed sweet potatoes, creating a slippery surface to ease the colossal weight. Each of these ideas has been put to the test. Modern experiments have used scale models and even full-sized concrete replicas to see what actually works. These trials reveal a crucial truth. No single method is easy. Each requires a deep understanding of physics, coordinated labor, and a tolerance for immense risk. The walking method, while elegant, could easily lead to a catastrophic fall, shattering a statue that took a generation to carve. Dragging a statue on a sledge demands an enormous quantity of strong timber and a prepared pathway, resources that were not infinite. This ongoing debate does more than just argue over technique. It highlights the incredible blend of brute force and clever physics the Rapa Nui people must have commanded. They were not just moving stone, they were solving a multidimensional puzzle with no margin for error. Their solution had to be not only effective, but repeatable, safe enough to transport hundreds of giants. Yet the journey itself is only half the story. What happened when these colossal figures finally reached their sacred destinations? Every successful movement of an 80-ton giant relied on a deep, intuitive understanding of physics. Without animals to help them, the Rapa Nui people had to amplify their own strength, and they did so with two simple yet brilliant tools: ropes and levers. The ropes themselves were engineering marvels, painstakingly braided from the incredibly strong inner bark of the hawhau tree. These were not simple cords, they were thick, durable cables capable of withstanding forces that would snap modern synthetic ropes. Teams of people would have gripped these lines, their collective muscle becoming a single, powerful engine. But raw pulling power alone would not make a statue walk. The real secret was leverage. By sliding long, sturdy wooden poles beneath the moai's base, small teams could create precise pivot points. With a coordinated push, they could lift one side of the colossus just enough to shift its weight, rocking it onto a new corner. This was not about brute force, it was about finesse. The rhythmic, side-to-side motion of the walking method would have looked like a carefully choreographed dance. To keep everyone in perfect sync, the operation likely had a conductor, a leader who called out chants or beat a drum to time each pull and release. A single misstep, one rope team pulling out of rhythm, could send the statue crashing to the ground, undoing years of work in an instant. This slow, deliberate procession, covering maybe a few hundred feet in a full day, was a breathtaking display of communal trust and shared purpose. It transformed an impossible engineering task into a powerful cultural ritual. And the very ground they walked on tells its own part of the story. The roads these giants walked are still etched into the earth, crisscrossing the island like ancient arteries. These ceremonial paths connect the volcanic quarry directly to the coastal altars known as Ahu. These are not smooth, engineered highways. They are rugged tracks, often sloping and littered with sharp volcanic rock, a testament to the raw challenge of the journey. If you look closely, you can see a subtle but telling feature on some of these roads, a shallow, worn groove running down the center. This gentle concavity is the ghost of 1,000 journeys, the cumulative mark left by the bases of countless moai being guided slowly toward the sea. This was not a random trek. The route was carefully chosen, likely following the most stable ground and the most direct line to a specific coastal platform. Every inch of the way was a calculated decision. Moving an 80-ton statue was far more than a simple transport job. It was a sacred procession. The statue was not just a block of stone, it was an ancestor, a vessel of immense spiritual power called mana. Its journey from the quarry to its eternal home was a ritual of immense importance, a physical act intertwined with deep religious belief. The rhythmic pulling, the coordinated chants, the sheer communal effort, all of this was part of a ceremony that breathed life into the stone. These roads were not just paths of transit, they were pathways of the ancestors. Walking these routes today, you can almost feel the echo of that purpose, the profound significance of every slow, deliberate step that brought a giant to its final resting place. The idea of these stone giants walking across the landscape is an image that captures the imagination. It is a dynamic hypothesis that turns a logistical nightmare into a kind of ceremonial procession. This theory suggests the Moai were not dragged horizontally but transported upright, rocked side to side by coordinated teams pulling on ropes. The statue's own design seems to beg for this very motion. Their heavy, bulging bellies shift the center of mass forward, while their distinctive D-shaped bases create a natural pivot point, perfectly engineered for a controlled, rhythmic rocking gait. The visual is powerful, a line of people chanting in unison, slowly coaxing an ancestral figure to walk toward its final home. Modern experiments have put this theory to the test with dramatic results. Researchers successfully walked a full-sized concrete replica with a team of just 18 people. The replica, weighing many tons, was maneuvered forward with a surprisingly efficient swaying motion, proving the method is not only possible but remarkably effective on flat, open ground. This approach would have delivered the statue to its Ahu platform already standing, ready for its final installation, eliminating the need for a dangerous and complex lifting operation. Yet for all its elegance, the walking theory faces a steep and rocky path of its own. Critics point to the island's actual terrain, which is anything but flat. The ground is a jagged tapestry of volcanic rock, sudden dips, and uneven slopes. A single misplaced step, a loose stone, or one team pulling out of sync could have sent an 80-ton giant crashing to the earth. The consequences would have been catastrophic, shattering a masterpiece that took a generation to carve. The risk of such a fall casts a long shadow over the idea of walking them for miles. This dynamic method stands as one of the most compelling solutions to the transport puzzle, a brilliant fusion of physics and ceremony. But the very ground they had to cross suggests it is not the only story. Contrasting the elegant sway of the walking theory is a more grounded and equally formidable proposition. Imagine the Moai laid carefully on its back, cradled within a massive wooden sledge. This platform would then be pulled by teams of workers over a track of logs placed side by side, a method familiar across many ancient cultures. With each pull, the statue would roll forward as new logs were constantly rushed from the back of the procession to the front, creating a continuous, moving pathway. The friction of dragging such an immense weight would have been staggering, a problem the Rapa Nui likely solved with a clever, organic lubricant. They could have slathered the log track with a slippery paste made from mashed sweet potatoes, effectively creating a greased slide to coax the giant along. This sledge and roller method feels intuitively practical, a systematic solution that turns the statue into a passive cargo. It aligns with known Polynesian traditions for moving heavy canoes and other large objects. Yet this theory hinges on one critical and ultimately finite resource: wood. A single Moai transport would have consumed enormous quantities of timber, not just for the heavy sledge itself, but for the dozens, perhaps hundreds, of rollers needed for a multi-mile journey. This creates a profound conflict with the island's known history of complete deforestation. Could a society that eventually ran out of trees have sustained a transportation industry so dependent on them? This method highlights a completely different set of logistical nightmares, demanding not just coordinated labor, but a constant, massive input of material and a carefully prepared, clear path free of major obstacles. The debate is not merely about which technique looks more impressive. It strikes at the very heart of what Rapa Nui society was capable of and what resources they were willing to expend for their gods. Was their solution an elegant, low-impact dance or a massive, resource-intensive engineering project? The answer may not be a simple choice between one or the other. Perhaps the truth is that both methods were used, chosen based on the specific statue, the terrain of the day, or the changing fortunes of the island's forests. The pollen trapped in ancient lake beds tells a silent but devastating story. Long before the first Moai were ever conceived, Easter Island was a very different world. It was not the wind-swept grassland we see today, but a lush, subtropical paradise blanketed by a vast forest of giant palms. These trees were the island's lifeblood, and their gradual disappearance is the dark backdrop against which the entire saga of the statues unfolds. The first Polynesian settlers arrived into this verdant world, and they began to clear the forests for crops, for canoe building, and for new settlements. This was a slow, generational process, but its consequences were absolute. The trees did not just provide shade, they were the raw material for an entire civilization. The strong, fibrous bark of the hauhau tree was braided into the massive ropes needed to pull the statues. The tall, straight trunks of the palm were perfect for making the levers, sledges, and rollers required to move them. Every single Moai that ever walked or slid across the island did so on a pathway built from wood. The peak of statue construction, the era when hundreds of giants were being carved and transported, directly coincides with the period of the most aggressive forest clearing. This was a society running at full tilt, channeling all its resources and ingenuity into a single, magnificent expression of power and belief. But the island's resources were not infinite. The very same trees that fueled this incredible cultural explosion were being systematically consumed by it. The canoes they needed for deep-sea fishing required wood. The timber for their homes and the tools for their daily life required wood. The transport of every new statue demanded yet more wood. It was a race between ambition and sustainability, and eventually the forest lost. The complete deforestation of the island was an ecological catastrophe that reshaped everything. Without tree roots to hold the soil, the land eroded, making farming more difficult. Without large trees to build sturdy ocean-going canoes, deep water fishing vanished, stripping away a vital source of protein. And most critically for our story, without the massive logs for sledges and rollers, and without the fibers for giant ropes, the entire system of Moai transport ground to an irreversible halt. The quarries at Rano, Raraku are filled with abandoned giants not simply because of technical failures, but because the very infrastructure of their movement had been chopped down. This is where the mystery of the statues transforms into a profound cautionary tale. It forces us to see the people of Rapa Nui not as mystical engineers, but as a human society making choices under immense pressure. Their greatest spiritual achievements were built with materials that could not be replenished. The silence that eventually fell over the quarry was not just a cultural shift, it was the direct echo of the last great tree falling. After an arduous journey, the Moai's destination was its Ahu, a massive stone platform that was far more than a simple pedestal. These coastal altars were the sacred heart of Rapa Nui society, the final piece of an epic engineering puzzle. Building an Ahu was a monumental undertaking in its own right. Master stonemasons carefully selected and shaped large blocks of dense basalt, fitting them together with such precision that not even a sliver of light could pass between the stones. They achieved this perfect joinery without a single drop of mortar, relying on an intimate knowledge of stone and geometry. The result was an incredibly stable, level foundation designed to support a colossus for centuries. This was not just construction, it was an act of devotion, creating a permanent bridge between the community and the spiritual realm. The Ahu was the axis where the world of the living touched the world of the ancestors. Once the platform was ready, the community faced its final and perhaps most dangerous task, raising the moai to its feet. The statue, having traveled miles lying down, now had to stand. Researchers believe this was accomplished with a brilliant combination of brute force and simple physics. They likely built a large, sloping ramp of stones and earth leading up to the Ahu's front. The moai was then carefully maneuvered onto this ramp, base first. Using the same wooden levers that helped it walk, teams would have painstakingly raised the giant inch by inch, packing more stones and dirt beneath its base with each small lift. It was a slow, perilous dance of leverage, a communal effort where one mistake could send the statue crashing down, destroying Ahu and moai alike. When the final lever was pulled and the giant stood upright on its platform, its long journey was complete. The Ahu transformed the statue from a traveling monolith into a permanent, watchful ancestor, its back to the sea and its gaze fixed over the people. The complexity of these platforms proves that the incredible feat of moving the statue was only half the challenge. The final touch on many of these ancestral giants was a massive, cylindrical stone crown. Quarried from a separate volcanic crater known as Puna Pau, these distinctive stones are called Pukau. They were carved from a striking red scoria, a type of lightweight volcanic rock that provided a vivid color contrast to the moai's gray bodies. Weighing as much as 12 tons, these were not mere decorative additions. They represented an important hairstyle or headdress worn by high-ranking chieftains, a symbol of status and authority permanently fixed in stone. The logistical challenge of placing one of these multi-ton stones atop a statue that could already be over 30 feet tall is almost dizzying to contemplate. How do you lift a 12-ton boulder to the top of a multi-story building without a crane? The most widely accepted theory involves the construction of a massive earthen ramp. After the moai was standing securely on its Ahu platform, workers would have built a great sloping ramp of stones, rubble, and soil, leaning directly against the statue's front. This ramp would have created a direct path to the top of the giant's head. The Pukau, which was often carved with a concave base to better fit the rounded head of the moai, could then be rolled or levered up this incline using the same principles of ropes and levers that moved the statues themselves. It was a final, monumental exertion of communal labor. The placement of the Pukau was far more than a technical achievement. It was the ultimate act of consecration. This was the moment the moai was fully realized, its spiritual power or mana complete. The addition of the red topknot transformed the statue into a fully fledged ancestor, a perfected being watching over its descendants. This crowning effort, requiring yet another quarry, another transport journey, and another incredible feat of engineering, underscores the profound cultural drive behind this entire endeavor. The Pukau are the ultimate symbol of a society pushing its creative and physical limits to honor its beliefs, a final, breathtaking flourish in a saga of stone. The true power of the moai was not in their stone, but in their gaze. These giants were far more than sculptures. They were considered the living faces of deified ancestors, known in the Rapa Nui language as Eringa Ora. Each statue was a sacred vessel, believed to hold a supernatural force called mana. This was not a vague spiritual idea. It was a tangible power thought to ensure the community's prosperity, fertility, and protection. The entire colossal enterprise of creation was fueled by this profound belief. A clan would commission a moai to honor a specific, important ancestor, linking their lineage directly to this source of divine power. The act of carving, the dangerous journey across the island, and the final raising onto the Ahu were not just engineering projects, they were a continuous, sacred ritual. Every tap of the stone chisel, every coordinated pull on the rope, every lever lift was an act of devotion that bound the community together and publicly demonstrated the clan's prestige and spiritual authority. This explains their deliberate orientation. The statues do not face the sea, their backs are turned to the endless ocean. Their watchful eyes are fixed inland, over the villages and fields of the people they were built to protect. They were eternal sentinels, their mana flowing from their stone bodies to bless the living. Without grasping this spiritual dimension, the story of Easter Island is just a puzzle of physics. But when you understand that these were the living faces of ancestors, the immense effort becomes clear. It was not a choice, it was a necessity, the very foundation of their cultural identity and survival. The silent, watchful Moai were the ultimate expression of a social machine of incredible complexity. To coordinate the labor of carving, moving, and erecting hundreds of multi-ton statues across generations required more than just shared belief. It demanded a rigid and highly organized society. At the top of this hierarchy were the paramount chiefs, believed to be direct descendants of the gods, and a powerful class of priests. They held the spiritual authority and the vision, commissioning the Moai to harness ancestral mana for the entire community. Just below them were the master craftsmen, the Maori. These were not common laborers, they were specialized artists and engineers who possessed the secret knowledge of quarrying and carving, knowledge passed down from father to son. They directed the work in the quarries, their skilled hands and trained eyes guiding every tap of the toki to bring an ancestor's face to life. And then there was the vast majority of the population, the common people who provided the immense physical labor. This was likely not slavery, but a system of reciprocal obligation known as mana. In this system, every family or clan contributed labor to communal projects as a form of social and religious duty. In return, they received protection, a share of communal resources, and the spiritual benefits bestowed by the completed Moai. Think of the coordinated effort required just to move one statue. You needed rope makers, log preparers, path clearers, and the teams of pullers, all working in perfect sync under a single chain of command. This was a society that could mobilize and feed hundreds of people for a single, slow-moving procession that might take weeks. The statue culture was the glue that held this entire structure together. For centuries, this shared, monumental purpose gave every member of society, from the highest chief to the lowest laborer, a defined role and a collective identity. The rise of the Moai was a direct result of this powerful, unified social engine. The arrival of a Dutch ship on Easter Sunday in 1722 shattered a millennium of isolation. Explorer Jacob Roggeveen and his crew became the first Europeans to lay eyes on the island and its stone giants, giving the place the name we know today. But what they witnessed was not the society at its peak. They recorded seeing many of the great Moai already lying face down, broken on the ground. The internal conflicts that likely toppled them were already underway. This European contact did not cause the initial decline, but it accelerated the collapse with devastating speed. In the decades that followed, other European expeditions arrived, each visit leaving a deeper scar. These ships brought invisible invaders, diseases like smallpox and tuberculosis, against which the isolated Rapa Nui people had no immunity. The population, already stressed, went into a freefall. Then came the violence and the slave raiders. In the 1860s, Peruvian ships carried out massive raids, kidnapping over 2,000 people, including the last reigning king, and all who could read the island's unique Rongo-Rongo script. Though international pressure eventually forced the return of a few dozen survivors, they brought back another wave of disease that sealed the fate of countless more. This systematic destruction of the people was also the destruction of their memory. With the priests and master carvers gone, the nuanced knowledge of how to quarry, move, and erect the moai vanished almost overnight. The sacred chants, the precise engineering techniques, and the deep spiritual meanings were silenced. The last moai was likely raised in the early 1600s, long before Roggeveen's arrival, meaning the Europeans encountered a culture already in a state of profound transition. Their intervention, however, turned that transition into a tragedy. The story of the moai is not just one of engineering genius, but also a stark reminder of how quickly a world can be unmade. The stone ancestors did not stand forever. A great and violent upheaval swept across the island, an event so profound it is still remembered in oral histories as the Huramoai, the statue toppling. One by one, the giants were pulled down. The very communities that had spent generations carving, moving, and erecting these sacred figures now took up ropes and levers to deliberately send them crashing face first onto the ground. The sound must have been thunderous, a sharp crack of stone meeting stone that echoed the shattering of an entire social order. This was not an accident of time or weather. It was a calculated, systematic act of iconoclasm, a rejection of the old gods and the ruling classes who claimed to speak for them. The ancestor cult that had unified the island for centuries, that had driven the incredible enterprise of the moai, had collapsed under its own weight. The immense mana, the spiritual power believed to reside within the statues, was now seen as dormant or even hostile. In a society stressed by deforestation, resource scarcity, and a fractured landscape, the people turned against the symbols of a system that could no longer sustain them. The ruling chiefs and priests lost their divine authority in the eyes of a desperate population. When the first European explorers arrived, they noted many moai still standing, but by the early 19th century, not a single one remained upright on its ahu. The fallen giants, their stone faces buried in the earth, are perhaps the most poignant archaeological evidence we have. They are not merely ruins, they are a powerful testament to a society in dramatic, painful transition. This period reveals a sobering truth about human civilizations. Even the most monumental cultural achievements, built over generations with unwavering faith, can be fragile. A society can pour its entire soul into creating symbols of eternal power, only to discover that the beliefs which gave them life are not set in stone. The fallen giants have kept their deepest secrets hidden beneath the earth for centuries. Modern archaeology is now gently lifting that veil without ever lifting a shovel. Instead of invasive digs, scientists are using technologies like ground-penetrating radar to see through the ground, and LiDAR, which uses lasers from aircraft to map the landscape in minute detail, stripping away the grass and soil to reveal the hidden contours of the land. These tools have uncovered astonishing truths. We used to think of the moai as massive heads, but the radar has shown us they are complete, towering bodies. Some of these buried torsos are covered in intricate, previously unknown petroglyphs, carvings of symbols and figures etched into their backs, forever hidden from view once the statue was raised. It is as if each giant carries a secret, sacred tattoo on its spine, a personal signature meant only for the earth and the ancestors. Beyond the statues themselves, science is analyzing the very soil they stood upon. By studying the chemical composition of the dirt around the Ahu Platforms, researchers can detect the ghostly imprints of ancient activities. They have found elevated levels of phosphorus and calcium, likely from the decay of organic materials, pointing to these spaces being used for rituals, feasting, and gardening. This transforms the Ahu from a sterile monument into a vibrant community center, a place of constant life and ceremony. Every technological scan and soil sample is adding a new line to the story, refining our timeline and challenging old assumptions. We are no longer just looking at silent stones. We are beginning to read the full, rich biography of a civilization written into the land itself. Even as the old ways crumbled, the stories refused to die. The Rapa Nui people safeguarded a precious inheritance not in stone but in memory. Their oral histories, passed in a chain of whispered knowledge from elder to child, have preserved vital fragments of the Moai's true meaning. These are not dry historical accounts, but living narratives woven with the spiritual power, the mana, that animated the stone giants. They tell of the powerful chiefs who commissioned the statues, linking their authority directly to the divine. At the heart of these traditions stands the figure of Hotu Matua, the legendary founding ancestor who is said to have led the original canoe voyage to the island's shores. His story provides a cultural anchor, a Genesis myth that explains the very origin of the people and their sacred right to the land. While we cannot read these oral histories as literal, step-by-step instruction manuals, they offer something perhaps more valuable, a window into the Rapa Nui soul. They reveal how the islanders themselves understood their world, their ancestors, and the colossal projects that defined their civilization. The statues were not merely engineering projects to them. They were active participants in the community's life, vessels of a power that could bless or curse. This perspective transforms the Moai from silent archaeological puzzles back into the living faces of the Eringa Ora, the living faces that their creators always knew them to be. These stories are a fragile but unbroken thread, a direct line from the present-day Rapa Nui people back to the quarry workers and the rope pullers, reminding us that this is not a dead culture, but a resilient one with a deep and enduring voice. The debate over how the Moai moved is not confined to academic papers. It is a question that has been answered with sweat, rope, and stone. Experimental archaeology has taken these theories from the page and put them to the test in the real world, transforming scholarly debate into a physical challenge. The most famous demonstration was led by archaeologists Terry Hunt and Carl Lipo, who championed the walking theory. With a team of just 18 volunteers, they attached ropes to a full-sized concrete replica of a Moai. Then, with a rhythmic, coordinated rocking motion, they made the giant walk. The statue, weighing many tons, swayed from side to side, pivoting on its D-shaped base and lurching forward with each controlled pull. It was a dramatic proof of concept, showing that a relatively small team could maneuver a colossal figure across flat ground. This was not just a simulation, it was a revelation, turning a captivating idea into a tangible, repeatable action. Yet other experiments have tested the more traditional sledge and roller method, quantifying the immense logistical demands. Researchers have built massive wooden sledges and laid out tracks of logs, then measured the exact number of people needed to overcome friction and get the weight moving. These trials reveal the staggering resource cost, consuming vast quantities of timber and requiring a large, coordinated crew for a journey of just a few miles. Each experiment, whether for walking or dragging, provides hard data on the physical limits and practical realities the Rapa Nui people faced. They answer critical questions. How many people does it actually take? How quickly can a statue be moved? What is the exact risk of a catastrophic fall? This hands-on research does more than just test a hypothesis. It breathes life into the ancient challenge, allowing us to feel a faint echo of the strain, the coordination, and the ingenuity required. It grounds one of history's greatest mysteries in the undeniable physics of rope, wood, and human muscle. Several of the great stone giants once again stand watch over Rapa Nui. Through ambitious modern conservation projects, teams of archaeologists and local workers have carefully re-erected Moai on their ancestral Ahu platforms. The most breathtaking of these restored sites is Ahu Raraku, where 15 massive statues stand in a row against the backdrop of the Pacific Ocean, their imposing presence restored after being toppled centuries ago. Another significant site is Ahu Akivi, a unique platform of 7 moai that gaze not toward a village but out to sea. These reconstructions required immense effort, combining modern engineering with a deep respect for traditional techniques. Cranes were used to lift the colossal stones, but the process of sorting the fallen fragments and understanding the original placements was a painstaking archaeological puzzle. These restored altars offer a powerful vision of the island's former grandeur, allowing us to witness the scale and ambition of the Rapa Nui civilization as it was meant to be seen. Yet this act of preservation is not the end of the story. It is the beginning of a new and complex chapter. The very act of raising these giants has exposed them to a fresh set of modern dangers. Their ancient stone is now besieged by relentless coastal winds carrying salt spray that eats away at the soft volcanic tuff. The footsteps of thousands of visitors each year cause subtle but cumulative vibrations that can destabilize the ground around the Ahu. Even the touch of curious hands, the oils from human skin, contributes to a slow, invisible decay. The moai now exist in a delicate balance between being an open-air museum and a fragile archaeological site. The local community faces a profound challenge, managing the global desire to witness these wonders while protecting them for future generations. Tourism is the lifeblood of the modern island economy, providing essential income that supports families and funds further conservation. But this creates a constant tension. How do you share a treasure with the world without loving it to death? The Rapa Nui people are at the forefront of this effort, implementing sustainable tourism practices that protect the sites while sharing their cultural heritage. They are the guardians of this legacy, ensuring the moai are not just tourist attractions, but living symbols of a resilient identity. These statues have journeyed from sacred ancestors to fallen icons to restored monuments. They now stand as a permanent bridge between an ancient, ingenious world and our own, reminding us that preservation is not a single act, but an ongoing responsibility we all share. That silent quarry with its half-finished giants speaks to us across the centuries with a startling urgency. The story of Rapa Nui has been framed as the ultimate parable for our time, a stark warning of a society that allegedly collapsed after using up its vital resources. It is a narrative that feels almost too perfect, a civilization so consumed by its monumental ambitions that it cut down the last tree, dooming itself to a slow decline. This powerful analogy resonates deeply today as we face our own global challenges of climate change and resource management. The image of a people stranded on their own island planet, having exhausted the very materials that powered their culture, is a haunting and familiar one. Yet history is rarely so simple. A more complex picture has emerged from ongoing research, challenging this straightforward eco-tragedy. Some scholars point to the arrival of the Polynesian rat, which likely stowed away in the original canoes. With no natural predators, these rats would have devoured the seeds of the palm trees, preventing the forests from regenerating long before the last tree was ever felled by human hands. Other evidence suggests a role for natural climate shifts, with prolonged droughts making an already fragile environment even more difficult to farm. And we cannot forget the catastrophic impact of European contact, which introduced disease and violence that the island's population, already under stress, could not withstand. So, was it a self-inflicted ecological suicide, or a perfect storm of biological invasion and external shock? The debate itself is the lesson. It forces us to move beyond simple blame and to understand that societal fate is often a tangled web of choices, unintended consequences, and plain bad luck. The Rapa Nui people were not foolishly short-sighted. They were human, responding to the pressures and beliefs of their world in the same way we respond to ours. Their true story is not a simplistic fable about running out of trees, but a profound study in resilience. Even after the statue culture ended, after the forests were gone and the social order transformed, the people of Rapa Nui did not vanish. They adapted, they survived, they developed new social structures and found new ways to live on the land they had. Their civilization did not end, it changed. This is the most vital takeaway. The legacy of Easter Island is not a prediction of doom, but a mirror held up to our own global society. We, too, live on an isolated island, a beautiful blue marble floating in the vast emptiness of space. Our resources are finite. Our actions have long-term consequences that ripple through generations. The question the Moai silently ask is not whether we will fail, but whether we possess the collective wisdom to recognize our limits and the creativity to adapt before it is too late. Their silent gaze challenges us to learn from their complex history, not to repeat its hardest chapters. Decades of scientific inquiry have only deepened the central mysteries of Rapa Nui. The more we learn, the more we realize how much remains hidden. We have compelling theories for how the Moai were moved, yet no single method has been universally accepted by researchers. The debate between walking, sliding, and rolling continues because each hypothesis has its own compelling evidence and its own frustrating gaps. This is not a sign of scientific failure, but a testament to the sheer ingenuity of the Rapa Nui people, who may have used different techniques for different situations, adapting their approach to the specific statue and the changing landscape. The role of deforestation is another profound puzzle. Was it the primary cause of the societal collapse, or merely one symptom of a larger, more complex crisis involving introduced rats and climate shifts? We still do not have a definitive answer. This question matters deeply because how we interpret the island's past directly influences the parables we draw for our own global future. Beyond the how, we are still grappling with the why. What specific stories do the intricate petroglyphs carved on the backs of the buried statues tell? Were the Ahu Platforms, with their precise alignments, sophisticated astronomical calendars that marked the solstices and tracked the movement of stars? Every technological breakthrough, from LiDAR scans that map buried roads to soil chemistry analysis that reveals ancient feasting grounds, feels like turning on a light in a dark room, only to discover the room is far larger and more complex than we ever imagined. Each discovery does not simply provide an answer, it unlocks a dozen new questions. This relentless, unfolding mystery is the true magic of Easter Island. The Moai have not surrendered their secrets, they are simply inviting us to ask better questions. Their silent, watchful presence continues to challenge our assumptions, pushing explorers and scientists to look closer, to think deeper, and to remember that some of history's greatest stories are written not in ink, but in stone and earth. Those stone faces are now embedded in our global imagination. They stare out from movie screens, book covers, and travel documentaries, having transcended their remote origins to become universal symbols. The Moai represent something profound to the modern mind, a powerful cocktail of mystery, human genius, and the romance of a lost world. Their sheer scale triggers a sense of awe, their isolation a feeling of poignant loneliness, and their unanswered questions a thrilling invitation to the unknown. We look at them and we see a reflection of our own potential and our own fragility. This deep, collective fascination is the reason their story endures far beyond the shores of Rapa Nui. Popular culture has eagerly adopted them as the ultimate archaeological riddle. They have appeared in epic adventure films as the guardians of forgotten secrets and in animated movies as gentle, comical giants. In literature, they often mark the culmination of a long journey, the silent witnesses at the edge of the world. This recurring role is not accidental. It taps into a fundamental human curiosity about civilizations that rose, flourished, and left behind puzzles in stone. The Moai are the perfect protagonists for this narrative because their purpose feels both immense and intimately human. This global spotlight is far more than just a cultural phenomenon. It is a vital lifeline. The worldwide recognition of these statues directly fuels the scientific and preservation work that continues today. International teams of archaeologists, drawn by the enduring mystery, secure grants and mobilize resources because the world cares about the answer. Tourism, driven by this fascination, provides the economic foundation for the local community to act as stewards of their own heritage. Every visitor who makes the long journey to stand before the giants contributes to the funds needed for their ongoing conservation. The Moai captivate us because they are a timeless testament to what people can achieve with nothing but determination, ingenuity, and shared belief. They are a monument to the human spirit itself, reminding us that greatness can emerge from the most isolated and seemingly limited circumstances. In their silent, watchful presence, we find a mirror for our own ambitions and a sobering lesson about the legacies we choose to build. The story of the Easter Island Moai is a profound testament to what people can achieve when united by a shared vision. From their birth in the volcanic quarry to their final vigil on the coastal altars, these stone giants embody a breathtaking convergence of spiritual belief, raw ingenuity, and flawless communal organization. They represent one of humanity's most remarkable cultural achievements, born not from a global network of ideas, but from the brilliant, isolated mind of a single culture. The ongoing debates over exactly how they were moved or why their era ended do not diminish their legacy. Instead, these questions enrich our understanding, reminding us that history is a living conversation, not a closed book. The true lesson of the Moai is not found in a single, simple answer. It is woven into the entire journey, the generations of coordinated labor, the intimate knowledge of physics, and the unwavering faith that turned stone into ancestors. They challenge everything we assume about the limits of ancient technology and the power of human cooperation. Their silent watch across the centuries is a powerful reminder that our world's past is still filled with mysteries waiting to be understood. We would love to hear your own thoughts on this incredible story. Which theory of their movement seems most compelling to you? Share your perspective in the comments. And if you enjoyed this journey into history's greatest enigmas, subscribe for more explorations into the past.